Okay, so my name is Andrew Martin, and I'm actually a double major. I'm a philosophy major and an education major, and my faculty mentor is Professor Ferrero out of the philosophy department, and my work is in contemporary agency and critical curriculum. But before we get into all that, I'm going to start with just a simple question that I've been thinking about with my time at UCR. And that question is, what can schools do to help students carry out their goals and actions? And as I've been thinking about this question, there's one word that I keep returning to over and over again. And that word is agency. Now, who has agency and what exactly is it? So I'm going to start with trying to explain a little bit about what it is before we look at examples of who has it and then how it's related to schooling, because I don't want to just dump everything on you all at once. So agency is the study of our capacity to be actors. This capacity often manifests through our actions and what some refer to as full-blooded intention. Now, it's important to note that actions are more than our handling of physical objects, such as turning on a light switch or starting a car. For our purposes here, actions include endorsing a goal or a preference, like deciding to go to college, and the deliberate steps necessary for pursuing and completing this goal. While full-blooded intention can be understood as meaning consideration and decision to act on or in pursuit of a goal. So you need both of those to have agency. And they are, like as I've outlined, a little different, but they work together. Now, part of what the philosophy of agency concerns itself with is explaining how our agency is carried out. While what you do and why you do is important, it is also important to understand how we are able to pursue and engage with our agency, how it is basically carried out and maintained. So who has agency? And how do we know when they're using it? Well, when looking at agency, it turns out we can find it in a number of different individuals and groups who are performing a variety of different types of actions. And I'm going to just go over a couple briefly. So how about this infant? Do they have agency? Well, it seems that they're expressing intention as they build this tower of blocks through their actions. So their intention seems to be to make the tower taller, while their action is the stacking of one block on top of another. So I think it's fair to say that, yeah, they've got it. They definitely have agency here. But this is admittedly a very simple example. So how about something more complicated, like student protests? Can we say that these students are interacting with and have agency? Well, in order for them to reach this point that they're at right now, they must have had some degree of intent and deliberation, choosing to show up and participate in the protest, as well as choosing to make the sign rather than doing other things. Given this, I think it's safe to say that they have it too. So far, we're good. So now given all of this, what we've learned about agency, we can return to that initial question of what schools can do to help students carry out their goals and actions. And we can refine it into something more accurate and specific. Something like, what can schools do to help students foster student agency? So now that we've talked a bit about agency, we need to establish some of the ways schooling fosters agency. Part of the answer is that our agency is fostered by the people we encounter in our educational experiences. This includes teachers and friends, administrators, and our parents. These are people who make it so that we can make choices and decisions and deliberations about our future. They collaborate with us. They help make it easier for us. Or sometimes they can make it harder, and we have to choose what we want to do. Policies can also impact a student's agency, such as disciplinary policies and practices. So, for example, if a student is outspoken or critical, policy can direct how educators and administrators react to these students. And these reactions impact the development of the student's agency. So a policy that directs educators to enter into a conversation with a student who is maybe more outspoken or more critical, right? If the educators and the administrators enter into a conversation and ask the student, why are you having these complaints? What do you want to do? That policy can go a long ways towards fostering the student's agency, their ability to think about themselves and what they want to do and what's important to them. Another way schools foster our agency is with curriculum. Now, admittedly, trying to define curriculum is a difficult task, partly because curriculum is a very, what I would call, sticky concept. However, if we were to make a serious effort at understanding agency's relation to schooling, we need to explore the connection between curriculum and the development of agency. In order to do this, I want to disclose we're going to have to get a bit more technical than I've been so far. So, as I've said, curriculum is sticky. And what I mean by that is curriculum is often defined by the goals held by those who are defining it. So, for example, if someone is wanting to foster a student's political or social agency, then they will often define what curriculum is so that there are guidelines that generate curriculum that specifically foster social and political agency. Whereas if someone thinks that schooling should contribute to a student's ability to understand and use specific subjects taught, such as math or language, then they will define curriculum in such a way that that is what the curriculum will emphasize. Instead of, social or political agency, it will emphasize learning subjects. We can see here that the result of this is there are a lot of different ways of defining curriculum based on your goals. And here are just a few. Now, I'm not going to go and try and tell you every definition of curriculum on the books. That's going to take way too much time. But these are common ones, right? And you have broader ones and you have specific ones. Content-centered, learner-centered, problem-centered curriculum. Those are all very broad. And then social and political agency through curriculum is an example. Environmental design curriculum is another approach. You have play-centered curriculum. These are all over the field. None of these have been wholly abandoned. They're all constantly being generated. While I don't think any of these approaches are outright wrong, they largely do not address the single issue that they all have in common, though. Now, the similarity that can be found in all of them is that each requires an agent to be successful. Therefore, all curriculum is concerned with agent success to some degree. Fortunately, there is acknowledgement of this in at least one approach to curriculum through what is commonly called critical curriculum. Now, critical curriculum, it's a bit of a mouthful, holds that curriculum is a tool that provides access to knowledge to agents, there's that word, agents, through environmental forms. So I'm gonna break this down a little bit. We can understand environmental forms as being the different aspects within an educational environment, right? These can be things such as materials found in the classroom or politics that inform the environment. Now, while critical curriculum goes a long way towards explaining what environmental forms are and their relations to one another, it does not have much to say about what agency is or how our capacity for agency informs the development of curriculum. Ultimately, it seems that agency is largely taken for granted outside of its political and social dimensions. And this is where my research really starts to come into play. So I had to do all that setup. So thanks for bearing with me. This gap in the literature is my main area of interest right now. Specifically, my research explores the foundations of agency in relation to the development of curriculum. Additionally, my research works towards showing that the development of any curriculum requires us to first have a firm foundation of what agency is. So there are several aims that my work is trying to, flesh out and go through. Firstly, I want to explore a number. Firstly, I want to explore the fact that curriculum is more than the development of social and political agency. Next, that curriculum is also more than a tool used to provide knowledge of subject areas such as math and language. Additionally, I aim to show how different approaches to curriculum talk past each other because they lack a clear foundational explanation of what agency is. And finally, my research aims to demonstrate that foundational explanations of agency justifies the development of social and political agency and the importance of environmental design, all of which together will allow for more effective curriculum to be developed that will in turn promote student agency in its different forms. Okay, perhaps you agree with everything so far, I hope, or to some degree it makes sense. And you're asking yourself though, what are the nuts and bolts? How am I going to accomplish this? What sort of methodology am I going to be using? So I'm mostly focusing this methodology through what can be explained as a comparative analysis of different theoretical approaches by curriculum scholars and philosophers of agency. Now, admittedly, this is a less traditional methodology insofar as I am not adhering solely to the methodologies of curriculum scholars or philosophers of agency that they use for producing their own findings in their specific fields. However, I do think that this methodology is necessary. The reason it is necessary is because it is a practical and effective way to pursuing interdisciplinary collaboration. After all, what is the point of having these researchers do all this work if there is no communication between them? But more importantly, this approach is necessary to bridging the gap between curriculum research and the role agency plays in defining and carrying out curriculum. This is because the gap, I am arguing, is the result of not having these foundations in agency that we can find through the philosophy of agency and philosophy of action. So my expected results are very similar to the aims I've just outlined. Specifically, I expect to demonstrate why and how a firmer understanding of agency is necessary to developing any type of curriculum, but is especially necessary to the development of critical curriculum, given that this approach acknowledges the agent as a central figure in curriculum. Further, though, I expect to find that explanations of what agency is will more clearly justify the goals and approaches to curriculum as outlined by critical curriculum itself. And before you leave, I would just have yourself ask these two brief questions. Do you care about the development of your agency? And do you think understanding what agency is and how it functions is necessary for the development of tools that aim to foster agency, such as curriculum? My answer is yes to both. And that's why I think this research is important, is because if we want schools to successfully foster the agency of current and future students so that they can better prepare themselves to navigate the worlds they find themselves in, then we need to make better tools. And that's what curriculum is. It is a tool to help foster agency, is how I perceive it. So thanks for your time. I hope I left you with something to think about. And I look forward to any comments or feedback provided. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the symposium.
Thank you, Andrew. That was a great presentation. And it did give us something to think about. Okay, now let's look at our next presenter, Eladio. And Eladio